Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the monthly Zoom call here in the summer of 2022. This is the second of four Zoom calls for St. Matthew's House, where we are taking on key social issues across Southwest Florida, some of the programmatic areas of St. Matthew's House. We're here at the St. Matthew's House Wolf Apartment Complex over in Golden Gate City, right now seated in the Seversky Livingston Library. Here, we'll learn more about this location later on in today's conversation. Today we're talking about housing and homelessness and trends we're seeing in Southwest Florida. I'm joined by Steve Brooder, our CEO. He's in his 9th year here at St. Matthew's House. The first 8 of those were as our Chief Operating Officer, and this year was promoted to our Chief Executive Officer. Also with us is Ray Steadman. Ray's the Vice President of Programs. Just celebrated his 10th anniversary with the organization a few months ago. And Kelsey Couture, Housing Administrator. She's been with the organization for 5 years. So they bring a wealth of knowledge, both looking at the systemic level and at the individual level in their years of experience looking at this issue. I'm really excited about each segment today. My name is Bill Curry. I'm the Vice President of Development. And we're going to take you through a few different segments. The first one really looking at what are the trends across our community? Then we'll dive into some of the individual experiences that we're seeing on the ground. We'll look a little bit at our programs, how we're responding to those trends, and then take a peek at the future, some of the key projects that we're working on right now. Near the end, we'll have the opportunity for some Q&A. If you have questions along the way, we would invite you to go ahead and put those in the Q&A feature, and we'll be monitoring that chat, and at the end come back and have a Q&A segment. So super excited. We're going to get right into the systemic level so we don't waste anybody's time. But before we do that, we want to be reminded of the fact that while we're going to talk statistics and trends, this is really all about each individual life and individual human stories and the trauma and the experiences that people have had that have led them to this chapter where they're intersecting St. Matthew's House. And so we're going to take just a minute to remind ourselves of the humanity behind this conversation. Take a listen to this.
My name is Stacy. I had recently had my car repossessed, which I was living in.
Hi, me and my kids are homeless living in our car. I'm waiting on a Section 8 voucher, but I need some help until then.
I'm in St. Carlos area and trying to find some kind of shelter. I apologize for my voice. I've been sleeping outside for 2 days.
I have a friend that just had to move into his car, and I'm concerned about him, and he's a good gentleman, and I'm just wondering what options there might be for him. He's currently looking for a job, but until he gets one, I just hate to think of him in his car. So if you could give me a call back, that'd be great. My name is Heidi. Thank you so very much.
Wow, I mean, I think just it's a reminder really of the significance of the work that we do and the significance of the work of volunteers and donors that are involved with, as well as just like each individual person. We're going to talk about waiting lists and those sort of things, but the idea that, you know, you got one message in there of a woman reaching out for a neighbor, families that were living in cars and cars being repossessed, and you know, just like kind of like you think about St. Matthew's House is really one of those places that is we talked about the other day, that one of the knots at the end of the rope, and we want to be there when people are ready to grab on and walk alongside as they rebuild their lives. And, we're going to get down to the individual side. But before we get there, I want to start maybe Steve with you initially. You do a lot of research, you pay attention, you talk to folks all across the country. What are you hearing and seeing in these issues across the country and both locally?
Bill, it's really heartbreaking to hear those voicemail messages, and we probably get 75 or more voicemail messages like those every week. When you think about homelessness, we have to think about the reasons or the causes. There's many causes for homelessness. It can be loss of family, loss of job, a medical event, a crisis that hits the family. It can be substance abuse or mental illness. But one of the major causes for homelessness is the lack of affordable housing. And we really have an affordable housing crisis in Collier County, just as we do in many parts of the country. Rents have skyrocketed here. We've had reports of increases exceeding 50% year over year. And that equates to $400, $600, $800, $1,000 a month. You couple that with the inflation that many households are feeling right now. Certainly the gas prices, food prices, coupled with rent, but electric bills are going up, water bills are going up. All of these are hitting households that could be at the tipping point. We know that about 40% of the households in the United States are only have about $400 in savings. And about 2/3 of the households in America are living paycheck to paycheck. So any of these events that could pop up could push people over the tipping point. So people are learning about these crazy rent increases at their renewal, and they have nowhere to go. They have no means to be able to make adjustments. These are the type of situations that could result in more of these voicemail messages that we receive at our intake department. It's a difficult situation. We're going to get into it some more, but the trends are alarming right now.
Thank you. Kelsey or Ray, anything that you're seeing systemically?
Yeah, I just think Steve hit it on the nose there. I think it's just due to housing costs, inflation. There's just so many contributing factors for why we're seeing an increase in homelessness, and our population has changed, which we'll talk about here after this next segment. But I think that's it. You nailed it. Yeah, lots of contributing factors.
Yeah, Ray, you mentioned about housing vouchers not too long ago in a conversation we had.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And there's a lot of folks walking around in Collier County with a voucher. This is a program through HUD. It's overseen by the Collier Housing Authority. The challenge is what we've heard over the years is, there hasn't been a lot of supply for housing of landlords that would actually take those vouchers. And so in years past, we've heard that waiting list to even get those vouchers, which it was as long as 8 years at one point. Now we have folks in the shelter who actually have a voucher, but the problem is there's no landlords willing to take those vouchers. They're limited on how much they will pay in rent. There's not a lot of inventory, and if you don't find housing, then the voucher expires within a certain amount of time, and then you have to start that process all over again. So it's just one more systemic issue that probably worked really well 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, but it needs to be updated. It needs to be refreshed with a lot of the costs that are real world cost for this geographic area and this market, in order to keep up with the demand and supply issues that we have specifically in this affordable housing crunch.
Yeah. Thank you all, I appreciate that. We're gonna take a quick breather. We're gonna go into that shelter that you mentioned here in Naples, where we're gonna take about 2 minutes. Kelsey actually recently narrated a tour for us and a program overview of what happens at the Campbell Lodge in Naples at our campus over on Airport Road. Many of you have seen it, but you probably haven't seen it quite like this. Let's take a peek.
At the Campbell Lodge, our main goal each day is to house the homeless in our care while providing the gospel message of hope. We can house 150 individuals within our men's dorm, women's dorm, and family dorms. The Campbell Lodge is made up of a team of administrative staff, program staff, security, and case managers, which work to move an individual from homelessness to self-sufficiency. We do this through cultivating an environment that is both compassionate and disciplined by providing accountability, which in turn leads to self-respect. Residents will set realistic and achievable goals with their case managers and will have access to referrals for their financial, medical, and mental health needs. We partner with many key organizations, including NCH, David Lawrence Center, and the Neighborhood Health Clinic, to make sure the residents have the resources to be successful. We provide AA, NA, and spiritual meetings on property, as well as life skills classes. Until the resident has reached self-sufficiency, we will help provide for all the residents' basic needs such as food, clothing, hygiene needs, linens, transportation, and other costs that may arise. We even have a wonderful volunteer who rehabilitates bicycles that we can gift to residents who need one for transportation. We have a no tolerance policy for drugs and alcohol, and everyone in our program will be drug tested periodically and breathalyzed every night at all of our properties. Residents have a 10 p.m. curfew and are assigned a daily chore to complete each day to contribute to their stay. We try to cultivate an environment in our family dorm where children feel at home. Each family has their own room and community playroom and playground where the kids can play, receive free tutoring, and work on their homework. We have a wonderful family program which provides specific resources for our resident mothers and children. As we know, childcare can be a financial burden to a single mother, so our case managers work to assist the mother in school and daycare enrollment. We will cover the cost of daycare through the funding we receive. We provide life skills classes, parenting classes, and any basic needs that they may have, such as assistance with diapers, clothing, formula, and school supplies. The Campbell Lodge also provides many additional preventative services to the community, such as showers for individuals to use who are not staying at the Campbell Lodge, paperwork to the DMV for individuals to receive their state ID free, our address for mail service, as well as transportation to alternative housing. Since opening our doors, we have had a waiting list of around 10 to 30 individuals who are in need of housing. Due to inflation and rising housing costs, we currently have 58 individuals on our waiting list for the Campbell Lodge. Over the years, we have seen our population change. There has been an increase in our elderly and veteran population who are experiencing homelessness. While we are making a large impact on the homeless in our community, the need is still great. Thankfully, we have just been approved to increase our bed capacity at the Campbell Lodge by 46 more beds, and our small renovation will begin this fall. Most importantly, we wish to reflect Jesus to those in our care by providing the gospel message of hope to hopefully change the trajectory in their life.
Well, Kelsey, thanks so much for that great tour of Campbell Lodge.
Yes.
and the programmatic details too. I think it's really, really helpful for our conversation today.
Right.
It's one of the ways that St. Matthew's House is intersecting this issue of homelessness and housing. So let's go into a little bit more conversation, a little more in-depth, a little more granular, individual. What are we seeing on the ground in the shelter? One of the things I've heard you say recently, Kelsey, is that the face of homelessness is changing. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the face of homelessness is definitely changing. 5 years ago when I started at St. Matthew's House as the intake coordinator, pretty much every person that I saw was dealing with either substance abuse or mental health or both. And now we're seeing the population, we've seen an increase in the elderly in our care, individuals coming in with disabilities, families on our wait list in need of shelter. And we're seeing a switch from mainly just serving the chronically homeless in our community to now the situationally homeless due to the pandemic and rising housing costs and everything that Steve had just mentioned with inflation. So that severely has impacted, you and I, who may not see ourselves ending up in a homeless shelter, but we're all one bad decision away from, or one catastrophe away from having to turn to a homeless shelter like us for services. And I think the pandemic pushed a lot of people to move, to their paycheck to paycheck. And so if something happens, their car breaks down or there's a situation, then they're forced to turn to a homeless shelter and they might lose their housing, and it leads them down a series of, a different path that they may not have seen themselves on before. So our population has definitely changed, and that brings a lot of unique challenges too. We just had a 97-year-old elderly female in our care, and Brittany Curry, she's in this room right now. She worked very hard to get her placed into an assisted living facility that had a waiting list, and it was just a long journey with that individual. And we're seeing more cases like that increase in the elderly who have memory issues and issues that may be above our level of care, and we're not the appropriate facility for them. We have to become very creative in how we can help them and move them, to the right place and take that next step with them.
Yeah, I would say it's always been an issue.
Right.
We've always had elderly or families show up.
Yeah.
But now the numbers that we're starting to see, I think there was 1 week about 3 weeks ago where 3 different single elderly women and elderly men showed up at the gate within the same week looking for shelter because they were about to become homeless due to one of these inflationary factors that Steve talked about. I think it might have been their HOA. They don't have support. They either don't have family or they're embarrassed to include their family. And so they just come looking for almost like out of survival,
Right.
looking for that last knot on the rope that you talked about earlier. And we just happen to be that family of last resort in those moments.
And not even just with our elderly or disabled, our families.
Yeah.
We've had a significant increase in the children we have in the shelter, and mothers who have been forced to live in their vehicles. We had a mom who was living in her vehicle for almost 3 months without air conditioning in Southwest Florida. And so she was pretty miserable, was doing the best she could for her children, was utilizing our food assistance program to help feed the kids, and then was able to come into the shelter and now is working and doing great. But, we see a lot of those heartbreaking situations with our moms who are just doing the best they can to get by due to inflation and housing costs.
And you mentioned women. I think women that are homeless is one of the fastest growing segments. And that can be elderly women, that can be single women, moms with children. We see that women veterans. So we see that in our shelter, and that's part of the increase in our wait list. A big part of it has been mothers with children.
Yes.
That's right.
I think it's interesting too is that we talked earlier about like the housing vouchers. That plays a part right in here too. Talk to me about how we're graduating folks from the shelter into housing. Are we having trouble with that? Is that a pinch point?
Yeah, it's a bottleneck for us. We have several partners, that offer that next step housing. We have some internal housing that we kind of move folks along through our own pipeline, but there's other partners in the community that have housing that are more appropriate for those with severe persistent mental illness. There's housing for veterans, there's housing for those with disabilities. The challenge is, just like that voucher system, is there's not enough beds available. They also are full. They also have wait lists. I don't know if you've seen anything different, Kelsey, but that's kind of where, as all the organizations that we all know who each other are, we're all in that same boat. There's more need than we have resources.
It's like an overload on the service
On the system, yes.
So people kind of stuck in the pipeline.
They get stuck in the pipeline, yes. And that's one of the things I think we had talked about over the years, is just that if we had a next step that was more consistent for the folks in the shelter, then we could actually serve more folks throughout the year in the shelter, because you will have folks that come into the shelter, they get on their feet, they save up some money, and that next step to transition is where folks get bottlenecked.
Yes, and we're seeing them stay longer at the shelter too. And like Ray said, we'd have those beds available, but the individuals who are ready to move out maybe and just can't secure that housing because first, last security, and that adds up to thousands of dollars, and the rent's just high anyways. We're bottlenecked, so we're seeing them stay longer, sometimes up to a year now in our programs, because there's just nowhere for these folks to go. But we are working on housing, within St. Matthew's House too, and within our Wolf apartments. Our families, going back to our families, they're able to sometimes transition to the units here that are open, which is really great. And so that gives them that next step, but it is hard to find that next step. We have to work really hard, like I said, and just be really creative, our case managers, to find, always be seeking what's available in the community. And then there's usually a wait. So it's just kind of a waiting game a lot of times. And then keeping our residents on the right track, clean and sober in the meantime, and focused on their goals, because that's a long time to wait in a shelter for housing. It can be discouraging. So there's that factor also.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate that. One of the things we want to try to do through these series of conversations is to also highlight some of our programs and locations that may not get toured very often, might be off the beaten path a little bit, not close to Naples necessarily. One of those is the Immokalee Friendship House out in Immokalee. It's another one of our shelter locations. We're super excited to show you Anna and get a tour of the Friendship House. Check this out.
Immokalee Friendship House is a unique 44-bed shelter located in Immokalee, Florida, serving men, women, and families. And we are the only one of 2 shelters in Collier County to also serve single fathers with their children. So for over 30 years, we have served a diverse type of population that faces many challenges and obstacles when arriving to this small migrant farm working town. Individuals we serve are a melting pot of multicultural backgrounds. Most of them are facing challenges like language barriers, oftentimes deterring the individuals from being able to ask for the appropriate help needed. But here at Immokalee Friendship House, we have offered basic English speaking classes and referrals to assist them in such important life skill. Illiteracy follows right behind the language barriers due to the migrant parents or individuals having to leave their country as early as 12 and 13 years old. Education is not a priority when you have a hungry family to feed back home, and sadly, sometimes the oldest child usually has to follow the parents' example and begin providing and helping with the living expenses back home. And it's a sad cycle that doesn't seem to end. So being a small migrant town, the community that we serve oftentimes are faced with having to follow the crop seasons and end up leaving up north year after year. This usually causes a chain reaction every year as individuals are not able to stay in stable housing and are oftentimes homeless when they return back to Immokalee. It isn't uncommon for men to arrive with a suitcase and a backpack looking for a place to sleep after the season is over. This is pretty much the bulk of our services. So as families struggle to make ends meet, what we do at Immokalee Friendship House is we offer direct services that include food, hygiene items, blankets, sweaters, diapers, anything to assist those individuals that are in between paychecks. We're going to continue to serve the community of Immokalee by assisting individuals with the shelter, direct services, assist them with new ideas and innovative ways to eliminate such hurdles. And in spite of the challenges the town of Immokalee faces, we are committed to carrying out our core values based on Matthew 25 and happily touching hearts and transforming lives in our beloved community of Immokalee.
Anna, thank you so much for the hard work you put into to giving us that tour out of the Friendship House in Immokalee. We're grateful for the opportunity to get a sneak peek there at the critical work that's being done and how it's on one hand similar and on another hand very different. Of some of the conditions and circumstances that are leading people into a situation of crisis or homelessness. Speaking of different stories, not everybody has the same story coming in, but I think in our minds at times we can stereotype or think we know who's homeless. Right? One of the things I'd like for you to talk about, maybe Kelsey, this one to you, is that misconception might be that people want to be homeless or that they're lazy or that they prefer this path. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, I hate this misperception. First of all, because I feel like when we make that assumption about a homeless individual that they want to be homeless, that they're not making the changes that they need to, and that may be true to an extent, but I feel like when we have that misperception, that it prevents us from really loving on those individuals well as Jesus has called us to care for the least of these as he's called us to, and it causes us to lack compassion and empathy, which we really need in order to help this population as we've been called to. And so when I hear people say things like, they want to be homeless, they're lazy, they don't put in the work to change, it's all addiction, they're choosing to be that way. The individuals in our program, are the opposite of that. I mean, they show otherwise. They're in the program, they're wanting to work hard to get back on their feet. And if they're not, they may end up back on the street, and that's their decision. But the individuals in our program, 25% of them are not the chronic homeless population. They are the situationally homeless, like we spoke of, due to the pandemic and rising housing costs. And they're there for other reasons. So a lot of them due to financial and otherwise. But our chronically homeless population, a lot of people think, those are the individuals on the street who are cyclically homeless and are usually struggling with severe mental illness or severe substance abuse. And I think that they aren't cognitively able to truly get themselves out of that homeless situation due to their cognitive needs. And so, there's a difference between the chronically homeless and the situationally homeless. And so with that misperception, I would just like to squash that because I think it's just not accurate in my experience working with the homeless population. Most of them want help, and a perfect example of that, we'll call her Jessie. She is 31, I believe, and she was homeless on the street for many, many months, and she was struggling with addiction and didn't know where to turn. Heard of St. Matthew's House, came into the shelter program, signed up for intensive outpatient treatment through David Lawrence Center, and maintained her sobriety for some time. And then she now has an awesome job as a career or as a chef at an awesome country club in Naples. So we're really proud of her for that. But that's just, she just didn't know where to turn. I think a lot of these folks just don't know where to turn. And so they need that helping hand. They need someone to walk beside them and disciple them and show them the way. Or at least that next step. What do I do to get myself out of my situation, right? So I think that's what they're looking for.
I love what you were talking about there with that that misperception in that a lot of times folks, if we just provide some of those basic needs, right? Because when you're in crisis, when you're homeless, when you're trying to figure out, okay, maybe I have some food for the day, but where am I sleeping tonight? You know, if we all took a moment, if we didn't have a house to go to or housing tonight and said, okay, I'm not sleeping at my house and I have no funds or resources, where am I sleeping? All of a sudden, everything changes. My priorities change. And so when we can get somebody out of that state of demand of all my resources and energy about thinking about where I'm sleeping tonight, let them acclimate to the shelter for a week or two, then all of a sudden they start to really believe that there is a next step. And that can be through job, through meaningful employment, through relationships, connections with churches, AANA, whether it's David Lawrence Center for outpatient treatment for their mental illness. And then you'll start to see people that can really start to grow some roots and start to progress a little bit slower than we might expect or faster than we might expect. You never know how people are going to progress. But one of the examples that I can think about is a gentleman, we'll call him Mike, right? Not Jesse, but Mike. And, you know, Mike has been in the shelter over the years, maybe 2 or 3 times, and with long gaps in between his stays. But Mike came into the shelter back in 2015 timeframe, also went through the David Lawrence Center, which is a great example of how we partner with other agencies. We have a very intensive recovery program, but all the folks that come into St. Matthew's House don't need that level of intensity. So we will take folks in and we will house them, and then they will work through whatever other treatment plans they can develop through one of our providers, and then come back to the shelter at night. They're safe, they're being held accountable, they're still going to meetings, they still have a case management plan, they're still able to have a job. And then what Mike was able to do specifically was he was able to save money, he got a job, started working with one of the agencies here, and now he actually works with the homeless population and helping getting them out of those chronic situations into permanent housing. So he's able to actually do what they would call a 12th step and give back to the community which he actually came from. And there's lots of examples of that. You can see in our staff and former residents who have been residents of our shelter or recovery program, and now they work somewhere within St. Matthew's House or somewhere in the community and are able to be contributors to the system.
Yeah, all the way from experiencing a crisis along a pathway of caring programs and being reminded of their gifts and talents along the way and regaining confidence and stability where they can contribute to the community around them.
Absolutely.
That's what I think what both those stories remind me of is just that we have gifts and talents in us. But when you also reminded me of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is if I'm down at the bottom and I don't know where I'm sleeping tonight, I don't know what I'm eating today, don't talk to me about hopes and dreams for the future because I'm locked into survival right now.
My hope is to get my meal tonight.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And so our pathway begins to start at the very base of that, Maslow's, and begin to slowly inch our way upward. And I also like your point, Ray, of like sometimes somebody goes slower, somebody goes faster, somebody recycles. And I think that's one of the big points of us is that there's always, when you're ready to make that next attempt, there's a place to do it at. It's at St. Matthew's House, right? I might not have been ready in 2018, but I might be ready in 2022.
That's right.
So I think what you're talking about, what we've all stated, is a phrase that we like to talk about: transformative rehabilitation. So that's really what we're describing. It's a process to take people through, to lead them out to the other side. You talked about the continuum from crisis to care to contributor in our society. So these are all things that we've worked on over many years, and people move at different rates, but we see results, and that's what really gratifies us and keeps us going.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got a short little time left in this segment. Another misconception can be that folks in the shelter don't have jobs. Ray, tell us about that.
It is a big misperception. And the truth is that folks who are homeless may not have a job, because it is kind of hard if you're living on the streets to go and find work. However, when someone comes into the shelter and they get that rest and they're able to have a few meals, we require them to look for work, find employment if they don't have any other sustainable income. And there's a lot of value that comes from work. There's dignity in going out and investing your own energy and your sweat into a project, and then at the end of the day or the end of the week, getting a paycheck, one that you actually earned. And so that dignity starts to build week upon week upon week, and you start to take money and start to see some savings that you also start to accumulate. And when you take someone that was literally 3, 4, 5 months ago who may have been panhandling, or who may have been living in the woods and really had no hope, now you're starting to see a change and a transformation, like Steve talked about, just because they are being supported by the staff while they're in the facility. They're able to take care of those most basic level needs on the Maslow's hierarchy, and now they can start to move up the rungs of that pyramid to start to see how maybe this can actually work out for me, because I'm able to bring my gifts and talents and abilities to my situation, and now I'm starting to see some fruits of my labor.
Yes. We've talked primarily about shelters so far, Friendship House and Campbell Lodge.
Yep.
Kelsey, what else from a housing perspective are we doing?
We're doing a lot. So if anyone wants to enter one of our programs, they first go through our intake department. So any housing within St. Matthew's House starts with intake. And intake is the screening hub, we'll call it. So anyone who wants to come in the program, they're going to contact our intake department. They're going to screen them, check into their background, make sure that they're safe for our housing. And they also act as crisis interveners.
Yep.
So they intervene into their crisis. And if someone is in crisis, maybe they can't come straight into our programs. They might need detox first, or they might need to go to the crisis unit and stabilize first. They'll connect them with those appropriate services. So they intervene and may refer them elsewhere if it's not to us, but they will refer them and connect them to the appropriate resource. So that's a big part of what they do. From our intake department, they would then place them into one of our appropriate programs. Not everyone needs Justin's Place or Jill's Place recovery program. That's a year-long intensive recovery program. A lot of our individuals are okay with the structure, that we provide at the shelter programs. So we drug test, we breathalyze, so that may be enough for them, enough structure for them to be successful within the shelter program. Or they go into Justin's Place or Jill's Place. So from there, we do have transitional housing options. So our graduates, well, actually not even our graduates, individuals in the Justin's Place recovery program, one of the phases of the program is to transition into the Wolf Apartments, which is where we're at right now. So 2 buildings within the Wolf Apartments will house our individuals within the Justin's Place program, and then the other 2 buildings will house individuals from the community who may have a disability, receive Social Security disability, or the families from the shelter can transition into those units, which is really great. We also have Justin's Village, which we're really proud of. So that's right across the street from our 2001 airport properties, Airport Pulling Road properties. And how many houses do we have there right now?
11.
11 houses, and that includes how many in construction? I know you're going to
Well, three of the 11.
3 of the 11 in construction.
Yes.
So that's transitional housing for our Justin's Place graduates, where they can go and live their beautiful houses. And within all of these programs, there's accountability and structure continued. So that's really great, and they're all individuals who are living their lives, for the Lord. Lots of them giving back within our shelter programs and working as staff members throughout our properties, but living their lives with integrity and honoring the Lord at those properties. So that's what we have going on.
Thank you so much. Numerous times during this conversation, and I hear it every day because I'm in the office and get to hear how many partners we work with. Is we don't pretend to do it all. We don't pretend to be qualified to do it all.
Right.
There's also some things that are in our wheelhouse, and some folks who you mentioned earlier, like people whose needs are different than our ability to care for them, so they might not fit exactly what we're doing. Steve, you work with a lot of these partners strategically in the community as well. Tell us a little bit about some of the other things that are happening that maybe not be direct service.
Right. It can be, and it's referrals a lot of times. That's what Kelsey was talking about, where we work with these different agencies. But we have a new effort that we're working. We have a collaboration work group that we call it, and it's several frontline agencies that deal with homelessness in our community. We're working on some solutions and some new ideas for outreach, ways to get to meet the homeless where they are, engage with them, point them to resources. These are agencies including David Lawrence Center, Catholic Charities, Salvation Army, Wounded Warriors we've mentioned, Habitat for Humanity, the Shelter for Abused Women. So there's all these different groups that are partners of ours that we work with, and they've come together with us to kind of work on some of these solutions that we hope to be presenting soon as ideas, new ideas to address homelessness in our community.
Great, thank you. Well, Kelsey mentioned that one of our transitional housing locations is the Wolf Apartments, where we're at right here. And Danielle, who oversees this property and provides services here and helps those developmental opportunities for folks who are here, she's going to give us a tour right here of the Wolf Apartments.
Hi, my name is Danielle. I am the housing manager here at Wolf Apartments. Wolf Apartments is a low-income transitional housing program. We work with families and individuals with disabilities. We work with our other housing programs throughout St. Matthew's House, such as the Campbell Lodge, Immokalee Friendship House, our recovery program. So we transition residents from those programs to our apartments. As residents do qualify, because there are certain qualifications that you have to meet, which is one is low income. So you do have to have full-time employment to qualify. Rent is fairly low here, so we do work with individuals just getting started and you know, back into the workforce, because a lot of our residents do come to us with no job and nothing else going on in their life, so that's why they come to our shelters and our recovery programs, and we kind of give them a little start as they transition out of those programs. Our residence for our family units is up to 2 years. We work with individuals who have disabilities as well, and that is our permanent housing residents. So there's no time frame for those residents to be here. Right now, this apartment here, we have furnished for we have a family coming from IFH. It's a family of 4, and it's a single mother. She has 3 children, so we have this apartment ready for her. She's grateful to be where she's at, to have the safety of Immokalee Friendship House, but at the same time, she is in a room with 3 small children, and each time she's very emotional. She cries each time I speak to her because she is, I would say, excited. It's probably excited tears, as well as I think she's just gone through a lot, and to be able to come here, the children have their own room, just to have this space and be able to cook for their families again. That's a big thing that I get from the moms that are in the shelters that want to prepare food and want to cook dinners for their children, where they're not able to do that when they're at our shelters. So that's a big thing, and just being able to have their own place and I guess feel more independent again, and be able to be a mom and be able to take care of their children on their own is a big thing for a single mother. The unity and the security and the community, you know, 3 words that just kind of bring it all together for a family, and to have that support. You know, I did this by myself for a couple years, so it was just me. Now I have a team, a staff that's able to work with the families as well, and all the individuals on my staff as well have their own story, so they can relate, and they've been there, and when the residents come to us, they feel that, and they know that, and they are comfortable enough, and they feel safe to be here with us at Wolf Apartments.
Well, thank you, Danielle. We appreciate that. You know, I'm struck watching these kind of back-to-back of just the high quality of leadership among the staff that are running the programs in the different parts of the organization. It's really, really impressive to me. Like, on one hand, I've been here for a while, but on the other, it's still just been 9 months. And so I love seeing just the high quality of compassion, the high quality of professionalism, and the high quality of like really caring from a ministry perspective for folks as well. So Steve, let's lean into this next segment here a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about the future, and tell us a little bit. I know right now we're in the middle of refreshing our brand. We're working in a feasibility study that is going to likely lead to a capital campaign down the road for some other projects. But there's a few projects right now that we're working on earnestly to get rolling. Tell us about those.
And one thing I want to mention, Bill, we just moved into our food and emergency assistance warehouse. So that's a big initiative that we're now very happy. We're blessed through the work of some generous donors and our team. We're in that new warehouse. And that whole food assistance program, we like to think of it as a homeless prevention program. I think that's an important point to mention, that if a family can get groceries to get them by a week out of the month, and they can apply those resources to these rents or fuel costs or some of the other rising pressures that they're feeling, that could prevent them from going over that tipping point into homelessness. But we have several other projects. We are expanding the Campbell Lodge. We're now able to go up to 150 beds, so we're working with the county right now and getting ready to make those improvements. We hope to be in with the new beds the first of the year. And another really exciting project is the Empowerment Center. This is a learning and development facility that will serve the people in our programs with various methods where they can get more skills, they can get financial literacy classes, they can find out about better nutrition, sort of tying that to our food assistance program, entrepreneurship classes. So it's really exciting. That will also open early next year. And we're excited about the opportunity to be able to help more people transform. And then Justin's Village. We've mentioned that as a transitional housing community for our graduates. So folks that have gone through our 12-month intensive residential recovery program can now rent in houses at Justin's Village. It's a 5-acre community that's directly across from our Airport Road campus. We have, as we said, 11 houses, 3 are under construction, and those should be completed around the end of this year. But we also have the opportunity to expand this development. So right now we're working through our engineers and the county to be able to add maybe 30 or 40 units of multifamily housing to really expand the opportunity for people to live in community. Danielle mentioned community. And that's so important in all of our transitional communities to give people that sense. Also, it's a safe and secure environment. It's sober living. People can live here up to 2 years, and the rent is very affordable. It's a very nice community with nice homes, but the rents allow people to save up. And as Kelsey said, it takes a bit to save up first and last in security deposit with these high rents to be able to move out. So they can stay here up to 2 years and then transition out. It's just a great program. We're so thankful to the Holochek Family Foundation, and a couple of other major donors have stepped up just recently to help us build these new homes. So we're very grateful and blessed. These homes have, one of the features is everybody has their own bedroom. So think of moving from dorm space into this type of living where you have your own room and you have your own space. So they're able to continue with their programming. They work for us in many cases, and many of them work right across the street. As this video rolls, you'll be able to see the drone rise, and you see the proximity to our main campus, which is right across the street from Justin's Village. So people can walk to work at Lulu's Kitchen, at the thrift store, or in the shelter. It's just a great, great opportunity to be able to house some of our graduates, keep them safe in the community.
There's a thrift store right there. It was open on Sunday, and people came crazy in lines to get in on Sunday afternoon for a special session at the thrift store. So just a block away. It's really amazing proximity for workforce development as well, which we'll talk about next month. It's time for some questions from the audience. I think we have some of those that will be coming up for us shortly. Question first one, Ray, let's ask this to you. You oversee all the programs at St. Matthew's House. Does someone have to be a Christian to stay at St. Matthew's House?
It is interesting that we get this question quite a bit, being that we're a faith-based organization. Even when the early days of being founded on Matthew 25, where the women's Bible study took place, and they took the initiatives to start feeding those folks that were in the woods. But one of the things that is not required is for you to declare that you're a Christian when you come into St. Matthew's House. We respond because we're Christians, but there's no requirement of you, if you're seeking residency in the shelter or the recovery programs, for you to declare a faith as a Christian. The reason that we do what we do is because we're Christians.
That's part of our motivation for service.
This is our response to the need, to that identifying series of needs that Jesus lays out in Matthew 25, when he says, when you've done these things, they will call you my disciples. And so we do those things because we want to be included in that segment where he's talking about, they'll know that you're part of my kingdom when you do these things. And so that's the reason we do what we do, but there's no requirement for the resident to acknowledge or to engage in Christianity.
Right, and I would like to add, if it's okay, that we do try to plant the seed as much as possible. So we offer prayer, at all of our properties with our residents. They don't have to be Christian to come in, they can decline prayer, but we do offer it, and we have Bible studies on property. And so we certainly encourage the faith, because we believe, only true healing and transformation, like we talked about, can come from a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so that's a big part of who we are. And we pray as a team at all of our properties at every meeting, and we prayed before this. And so obviously it's a big part of who we are. We are Christians. That is who we are.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Steve, this question's for you. From the audience, do you aim for a self-sustaining affordable housing model rather than a purely subsidized one? In my opinion, this is from the attender, a purely subsidized housing model would be more subject to the ills of inflation and therefore not likely to put a large dent in the overall problem.
That is a great question, one we're working on right now, because we want to be able to transition people beyond our housing into the community. So we're working with them to understand that while we keep the rents affordable, that's an opportunity for them to gain employment, have wage progression, be able to save up, and then transition out of our housing. We're also working with several of the different organizations that are tasked with finding solutions for affordable housing in our community. So that's coming. It's been a long time coming, but we're actively engaged with several different agencies and initiatives right now.
Great, thank you. Question here is, I've seen several properties during this hour. Is it possible to tour these properties in person? Maybe I'll take that one.
Sure.
Is that we are preparing to roll out a set of tours this fall. One that would be like an overview of St. Matthew's House. One that was a deep dive into the issue of homelessness at some of the different properties. One that's into an affordable housing. Another that's into recovery and addiction services. Another in food distribution and touring, like everything related to food that we do. So a variety of tours that are coming. Those will be sent out via email and on the website. Folks could sign up for those on certain days of the month and take deep dives into different parts of St. Matthew's House. For years and years, we've had kind of an overview tour or a tour of the Campbell Lodge. We're going to start to offer various opportunities for folks who want to dig a little bit deeper into a particular part of what we do. Question here, what kind of donations are needed for people who are experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, that's
Kelsey?
were you gonna?
Another great question. We all have answers.
Yes, that's right. Thankfully, we all have answers. So I know for the shelter programs, we are constantly in need of, I have a list of, linens, fitted flat sheets, pillows, pillowcases, hygiene products, full size and travel size, socks, boxers, underwears, the things that, just those basic items that you use every day, we are constantly in need of and are almost always on the brink of running out, and then the Lord provides. And so our community has been great at providing for those needs. But so that's specifically within the shelter programs. Were you going to add to that?
Well, all those things are gift in kind. Of course, monetary donations help because the cost of running these programs is going up. Our costs are just like every household's costs are going up. So monetary donations always help out. Kelsey is right now engaged in putting together some kits that will be part of this mobile outreach that we go out. So some of the things she mentioned are very important: socks and toiletry items, small wipes, different things that can go in a small Ziploc bag, so we can get those out there. People can go to our website. They can always volunteer. or donate at stmatthewshouse.org. I know we'll have more information on that, but thank you for that question. It's a great one.
Yeah, and I would just say, if you're gonna donate boxers or undergarments,
Not
Please,
used
let's make
undergarments,
sure
let's
they're-
specify.
Make sure they're fresh and new.
make sure they're new and in the packaging. But one of the unique things of the shelter programs, and all programs really, is that when you donate clothing items, sometimes I've donated clothes over the years. One thing we do is we offer a voucher system where our residents actually get to go shop right next to folks in our thrift store. So that also provides a layer of dignity, so that they're not just taking something that may not fit in a shelter clothing closet, because that's all we have.
Yes.
So that's just another unique thing about St. Matthew's House. So if it's monetary, as Steve mentioned, or if it's toiletries or brand new undergarments, or if it's something that we just need to clean out because it's a season change in our closet, we can take all those donations and impact those that are homeless right there at the Campbell Lodge and the Immokalee Friendship House.
That's great.
Great. Thank you all. And thank you to everyone who's attended today. We're just going to kind of wrap up a little bit. We want to make sure we honor your time. And we hope that today that you got some additional information, that you maybe some additional insight. And we hope you're inspired, that if you're a part of our St. Matthew's House community in any way, shape, or form, we hope you stay that way, that you're inspired to continue walking this road with us, this journey. And if you're not really a part yet of what we do, we invite you to join us and come alongside us as we come alongside folks that are in our care in our variety of programs. Folks often ask us, how can we help? First, I would say right now it's the middle of the summer, and financial gifts are at a premium right now. COVID relief is kind of behind us, but the need has been growing. So we would covet, if you're in a position to make a financial gift to St. Matthew's House, we would really appreciate it. We'd also love for you to volunteer. You can go on our website, stmatthewshouse.org, learn about the different volunteer opportunities that are available. You could also, those tours we talked about earlier, set up a campus visit to introduce a friend to St. Matthew's House and to our cause. And finally, we would love for you to plan your season around us, whether you're in Naples year-round or whether you're coming down for the winter. We'd love for you to participate with us at our December 2nd fundraising dinner, at the Naples Automotive Experience, or Cars on 5th in early February, the 25th Annual Dean Lynn Memorial Golf Tournament, the Cornerstone Luncheon, and several things in between. We'd love for you to plan a meaningful winter by being involved with us numerous times throughout the year. So thank you so much for participating. We're going to do one more thing. That is, we're going to send you a short survey by email. A, to say thank you and that we recognize that you were here. B, we want to hear from you. We want to hear if this was helpful, if there's ways we could improve it for next month, which, by the way, next month is on September the 27th, 4:30 p.m. We're going to be discussing workforce development in the third of our fourth conversation in this series. Workforce development, on one hand, is our workforce, of which about 40% of the St. Matthew's House workforce are graduates of our programs. But on the other hand, it's also looking at all of our social enterprises, not only as revenue generators, but as career relaunchers for folks who are on those staffs. So we're excited about that. We hope you join us. Thanks so much for coming today. We're signing off from Wolf Apartments in the Seversky Livingston Library. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everybody.